zero product property is very important because it allows us to solve things that might not otherwise have been solvable or not easily solvable. Because right now, if we would start guessing and checking in part A, 3 times a number squared plus 75 happens to be negative 30 times a number. It could take us quite a bit of time to figure that out. Just guessing and checking. Try 1. Does it work? No. What about negative 1? No. What about negative 10? No. Shoot. Right? And you get tired of guessing pretty quick. Now, the zero product property only works if one side is equal to 0. So as far as the first step in solving quadratic equations, I can move that minus 30x to the other side by adding 30x to both sides. That makes it equal to 0. And now if I can factor, I change my adding and subtracting to multiplying. And then I can use the zero product property. Now this could be a challenge one to factor. If you go right away to the brackets, you're going to make your life more difficult because there is a common factor of 3. So if you want easier factoring, look for that common factor first and take that out. Then we're going to check, can the inside be factored further? Well, if it could, the first ones are an x squared, right? If my first ones are x squared, it has to be x and x. My last one is 25. Could be 5 and 5, could be 25 and 1, 1 and 25. Do some mental math. Do a quick check. Does 5 and 5 work or 25 and 1? 5 and 5. Right? Because we want to check, does my outside and my inside make 10? It does. It would make 10 if they're both positive. Does it still work for my last one to get plus 25? It does. And now we changed it to multiplying. And the multiplications happen here, here, and breaks this up into 3 factors. And of those 3 factors, the zero product property says, in order for it equal to be 0, one of them has to be 0. The first one is a 3. Could 3 ever be 0? No. So we really don't, that 3 doesn't affect us. But I can sort of split it here. Could this one be 0? What would x have to be for this one to be 0? Negative 5. Could this one be 0? What would x have to be for this one to be 0? Also, negative 5. So in this question, there's only one answer. Sometimes they talk about, like in grade 12, we're going to talk about this answer being an answer of multiplicity 2 because the answer happens twice. It's the same answer that happens twice. Sometimes in this unit, we're going to talk about this one having 2 equal roots or 2 equal answers, which kind of sounds like, isn't that just one answer? What's your answer? 5. I got it twice. Well, that's only one answer, but sometimes they talk about it happening twice. Because when we factored it, minus 5 actually works for both factors. Let's verify the solution just by plugging it in. Remember, if something asks you to verify, you set up your left side and your right side. My right side is negative 30, comes negative 5. My left side would be 3, negative 5 squared plus 75. This side will be 150. This side is 150. And we verified that our answer is correct. Remember in square root equations, I said we always had to verify. Quadratic equations, if you make no mistakes, your answers will be right. So the verify part, I'll do it for part A. But technically, this is technically not necessary in a quadratic equation. If you solve it and you get answers, those answers are correct. Whereas in a square root equation, sometimes you'd solve it, you'd get an answer, but when you check, that answer was extraneous or not possible. So let's look at B. Again, I've got a quadratic, a 5x squared. So if I want to use the zero product property, one side needs to be equal to 0. So I'm going to add 20x to both sides so I get something equal to 0. This one isn't a trinomial. There's only two terms. It's not a difference of squares because there's no minus sign in between. But do we have a common factor? Yes. You see that there's a 5 in the 5 and the 20, and there's also both terms have an x. So if I factor out the 5x, that would leave me with x plus 4. Here's my multiplication now. You don't need to put the 5x in brackets, but you could if you wanted to. And if we split it at the multiplication, the zero product property says, if you're multiplying two things, then either one or at least one of them has to be 0. Can the 5 ever be 0? Can the x ever be 0? Yes. This is kind of a dumb question. If x was 0, what's the value of x? 0. So we would write here, one possibility is x equals 0. In the second factor, could that ever be 0? What would x have to be if this one is equal to 0? A negative 4. Now, if you had to verify this, you'd have to do a left side and a right side for the 0, and a left side and a right side for the negative 4. But I'm going to tell you in quadratic equations, if you haven't made a mistake, your answers both will work. Can you see the 0? Go back to the original equation. Can you see the 0 works really easily? You get 0 on the left, you get 0 on the right. The 4 here I get, the negative 4 here I get 80. 4 squared is 16. 16 times 5, also 80. So if you want, it's still not bad to check your answers, because checking your answers tells you, okay, not only did I do my work in the way I was supposed to, but since both of my answers worked, chances are my work is perfect all the way through. All right, questions to circle are 8, 9, 10. There's a lot to circle, actually. I'm sorry about this. 11, 13, and 18. And beside 18, I put a little star. It's probably in section C, which means it's going to be a little bit of problem solving and a little bit of thinking to figure it out.